Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, I'm John, this is Many a True Nerd, and welcome to a discussion about Fallout 76. Well, colour me surprised, I was not expecting them to announce that, but here we flipping are. Anyway, let's have a little chat about it, because I think we can actually start pulling together some rather interesting theories out of what we've seen so far, and what we can piece together out of the other Fallout games as well. So let's just very quickly start off with the date, which we can tell because it's visible on the charmingly square old school Pip-Boy. The trailer takes place on October 27th of 2102. That's the earliest we're ever going to have seen in the Fallout universe, with the exception of the prologue in Fallout 4. Fallout 1 took place in 2161. Now that's a very interesting date, because this is not actually the first bit of information we have about Vault 76. Just like the Commonwealth, there's hints about it right there in all the existing Bethesda Fallout games, though a lot more subtly than the stuff about Fallout 4. It's mentioned in passing in Mothership Zeta and one of the audio logs, audio log 13 to be precise, and again in Fallout 4's opening as well. But of particular note is that in the Citadel in Fallout 3, we find a list of the vaults, all of which are in the game except for one, Vault 76. Now from that terminal we know that Vault 76 is a control vault designed to hold 500 people for 20 years and then release them with no experiment conducted on them within the vault. Except immediately something is wrong. 20 years would be October of 2097, and yet our unnamed trailer protagonist is still there in 2102, 5 years and 4 days late. Now, we could make some reasonable assumptions based on what we see in the trailer. On the bed in the first room, we can see a filthy backpack, so he must have already been outside already. The vault could simply be a base, and that makes perfect sense. Vault 101 stayed mostly shut, but let people in and out occasionally over the years, and if you were rebuilding in a dangerous environment, using the vault as an ongoing secure base seems eminently sensible. But what doesn't make sense is that Reclamation Day presumably would have been when the vault opened, in 2097. So why are the decorations still up 5 years later, and where are the other 499 people? Now as for the other people, we can't actually be sure how many there actually were. 500 may have been the plan, but like in Fallout 4's Vault 81, sometimes vaults closed without everybody inside. In fact, as we witnessed firsthand with Vault 111, there just wasn't much time to assemble, so it's entirely possible that our protagonist might have just spent 20 years in the vault on his own, as happened in Vault 77. Or perhaps the 500 represent other players if this game does indeed end up with a so far unconfirmed but rumoured online element. But if you were to still be returning to the vault after 5 years and everyone else is missing, then what happened? We can't be entirely sure yet, but what we do know is that opening up a vault 20 years after the Great War is not a death sentence. In fact, it happens almost strangely often. Fallout 2's Vault 8 opened in roughly that timescale, though there is some conflicting information on the dates between the game and the Fallout Bible, with the exact same purpose that the Fallout 76 trailer hints at, to rebuild. And they did, building Vault City, which went on to be successful, technologically advanced, and would ultimately integrate into the NCR in the future. Vault 3 was actually supposed to open exactly 20 years after the Great War, but they just kind of chose not to. And if you're willing to accept the Fallout Bible as canon, Vault 29 opened in 2090, and Harold emerged and survived. Vault 22 also cleared out in 2096, and probably would have actually done very well in Zion had they not already been infected by the spores. In short, not a single one of the societies that opened up in this period immediately discovered that it was impossible to survive due to, for example, radiation levels, so we shouldn't be expecting a grim nuclear winter as a result of this early date. In fact, if we want a clue to the mystery of what happened to the other people in the vault, there's actually a clue to that in the trailer if you look very, very closely. 2 of the trophies that briefly pass by in a display case are very interesting. Some people seem to have missed this, by the way. If you actually just kind of whack the trailer up to its highest resolutions and watch on a big enough screen, the text on the trophies is quite legible. So the text on the right one, on the middle shelf, reads, "Excellence in bravery in recognition of the canned mystery meat experiment you volunteered to eat when no one else would. We are proud of you and glad you are not dead." Now in Fallout, euphemisms like strange meat and mystery meat usually mean only one thing: cannibalism, though it might have just meant that food was running extremely low. The second, however, is even more interesting. Outstanding Achievement Award in appreciation for your commitment and dedication to our isolation program, sacrificing many so some can live. As is almost tradition for Vault-Tec, something has gone wrong, maybe by accident, maybe by design. But if we start looking at all these pieces together, this is what starts making everything potentially fit. Why is the main character alone? Why is it 5 years and 4 days after Reclamation Day should have happened? What's the isolation program? And why did cannibalism break out? What if Reclamation Day was October 2097? What if that was when most of the Vault dwellers left? In fact, what if we take the Fallout 3 note very literally, given it reads, "This vault will open automatically after a period of 20 years and residents will be pushed back into the open world for study in comparison to the other experiments." Pushed back into the open world. What if we assume that people were somehow forced to leave in 2097 and were unable to return? Perhaps the vault was supposed to seal itself again after they left to ensure they actually got out and rebuilt and didn't do what Vault 3 actually did and just decided to stay in the vault because it was a bit safer. Perhaps they didn't even need to be forced because something went badly enough wrong in the vault that the canned mystery meat program had to be started, whether that means cannibalism of the dead or simply food running so low that very, very unpleasant things were being eaten. And that brings us to the isolation program. Could that be one person who volunteered to stay in the vault after it resealed, perhaps to maintain crucial systems in case it was needed in the future? Move on 5 years to where we know the trailer takes place and, for whatever reason, the door now opens again, perhaps permanently this time, and that's where the game begins. You, on your own, stepping out into a world where somebody else already tried to start rebuilding 5 years ago, with the starting quest being to track down the settlements they built, which will no doubt be abandoned, burnt, whatever, and then chase down any survivors to discover what happened. It's the sort of plot that Bethesda really flipping likes. A lone Vault member leaves a Vault and starts a main plot to track down missing former Vault residents. If I had to put money on the setup for the game, I'd put it on that. Now, as for Vault 76 itself, where is it? Now, that's a very interesting question, as the Citadel Terminal does clearly label Vault 76 as part of the DC area vault, and all the other vaults fall within the Washington metropolitan area. But there was no sign of Vault 76 in Fallout 3, and, as people have been very quick to jump on, the radio was playing Take Me Home Country Roads, which does certainly hint at a rural West Virginia setting, which would be entirely feasible given it's still within the northeast quarter of the US that Bethesda very much liked, very close to the Pittsburgh in fact. As for the state of West Virginia in Fallout, that's actually a complete unknown. No one has ever mentioned it as far as I can see. It's 2 east for the Midwestern Brotherhood of Steel and 2 west for the Capital Wasteland. If the slavers of the pit knew anything about it, they never said. We might, however, assume it was bombed a lot less intensively than the capital was. I think it's actually quite reasonable Bethesda could just hand-wave the DC listing as saying it was a vault designed to house DC people, or under the DC headquarters authority, and still be a more rural and new setting. I don't think we necessarily have to assume it's going to be in the Capital Wasteland again. Now, there's one more thing I did want to talk about, and that's something I mentioned earlier. Vault 77. We're getting into slightly crazy conspiracy theories here, but just, bear with me. There's actually some interesting evidence here. In case you missed it, there's a short comic strip called One Man and a Crate of Puppets. It was written by the Penny Arcade lot, but also co-created by Fallout 3's lead designer. I'll link to the whole thing below as it's quite short, but basically, as a Vault-Tec experiment, one man is locked by himself in Vault 77 with a box of puppets, who, over time, he begins to speak to as he loses his mind. After a Vault Boy puppet murders one of the others, he flees the vault with the Vault Boy puppet in around 2079 and kills a small group of slavers after trying to warn them that his puppet was a murderer, and then follows the survivor back to the camp and murders the rest of the slavers too. Now, normally I wouldn't consider that relevant to the actual Fallout games, even though Fallout 3's lead designer was involved, except for 3 rather interesting details. Firstly, why out of all the numbers in the world was the Puppet Man from Vault 77 when Bethesda had already put Vault 76 into Fallout 3 as setup for Fallout 76, just like they put in young Arthur Maxson, Zimmer and Harkness for Fallout 4? Is there intended to be a connection? Secondly, Vault 77 and the Puppet Man are actually referenced in Fallout 3, so this is in-game canon. The Vault 77 jumpsuit is in Paradise Falls, and the slavers consider him some sort of boogeyman who hunts down and murders people.
Like I told you, man, I don't fucking know where it came from, but it freaks the boys out. Some story from a while back about a stranger with no name. Just get rid of the damn thing. Ain't no good gonna come from keeping it around. Besides, if it is his, maybe he'll come back for it. Comprende?
And thirdly, and most importantly, why did Bethesda repeatedly have the Puppet Man's Vault Boy puppet show up in the Twitch stream that preceded the announcement? Those three things together, combined with the realisation that Bethesda did indeed intentionally include Vault 76 in the Citadel terminal, so we know they were foreshadowing this sort of thing way back in 2008, that makes me wonder if this is actually going to be a thing in Fallout 76. If the Puppet Man does appear, or any other creepy puppet related stuff at all, don't be too surprised. Anyway, that's all I've got for now. Obviously, I'll be keeping my ears open throughout E3. I'll bring you any updates as soon as I can. But in the meantime, I've been John. This has been Many a True Nerd, and this has just been a few interesting little thoughts I had about Fallout 76. Thank you very much, and goodbye. We have got a gate key here, and then we have got a... I've made a mistake! I've made a mistake! I've made a mistake! I've made a mistake! This is going to take all of my skill and cunning as a hunter to sort out... Die, you mooing bastards! Die! Die! Go away. Go away, nobody likes you. That was a good idea till it wasn't.